Shafi and Jen, a great big hand, and come on up. Brian, woo, yeah.
It's getting to a busy time of year for athletics. On Friday, the volleyball team defeated Bethel 3-1 at homecoming. They play at Fort Scott this Wednesday, and the JV hosts Ottawa on Saturday at 6. Men and women's soccer lost on Saturday at Neosho. They play at Allen County on Wednesday, and on Saturday they host Southeast Community College at 1 and 3:30 here. On Thursday evening, the men's team hosts Tabor. Cross-country team is at the NCCC Panther Invite this Friday in Chanute, Kansas. The softball team is at Central Christian this Friday, and on Sunday they host the Kansas Blue Sox at 1 p.m. The baseball team hosts Urquhart Baseball on Saturday at 1 p.m. and travel to NOC Tonkawa in Oklahoma on Sunday. Women's basketball scrimmage will be Saturday at 1 p.m. here. Men's basketball team participates in the All-American Jamboree in Wichita on Sunday. You can watch esports matches on Twitch. If you go to our athletics schedule, they will be up there soon. The Valorant team lost to Grandview 1-2 and defeated Portland 2-0 this week. Super Smash Brothers lost to Texas Tech. In Rocket League, we defeated Fort Lewis and lost to Texas Tech. On Monday, Valorant plays Augustana at 7. Rocket League plays Embry at 7:30. On Tuesday, Rocket League plays Houston and Valorant plays South Alabama. On Wednesday, Overwatch plays Commonwealth at 7. On Thursday, Rocket League plays Montana at 8. And on Friday, Overwatch plays Montana at 7. On Saturday, there's a Fortnite qualifier tournament at 2 p.m. and you can watch all of those on Twitch.
A reading from Psalm 139. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. There are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you. Amen.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Whitney Douglas. I am the Director of Equity and Accountability and Title IX Coordinator here at Hesston College. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about boundaries and about identity. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that by telling you a little bit about my own story. I am very used to public speaking and have spoke to crowds much larger than this, and yet when I share about stuff that's personal, things feel a little bit more nerve-wracking. And so I'm going to start by taking that out on all of you and ask you to stand up with me, because I need to stand up. If you need to get out some nervous energy, feel free to move around a little bit. But if you've ever flown on an airplane or watched a movie in which they fly on airplanes, you've probably heard the speech that stewardesses give about all the safety things you need to do. And in particular, they will tell you in the case of oxygen pressure changing in the cabin, the oxygen masks might drop in an airplane. And they'll instruct you that you should put your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else in that speech. I would like you right now, if you are someone for whom upon the first time hearing that, whether that was now or in the past, you thought to yourself, why in the world would anyone need to be told that? That would be so obvious. Of course, I'll put my mask on first. I want you to sit. if that's true for you. All right. There are a couple of people. I didn't know what to expect, but most of you are still standing. You may all now sit down. I have flown a lot. I've been on many, many airplanes. I have flown on short little trips. I've gone up for hobby flights in an airplane, and I've traveled to several other continents. And never have I ever experienced personally the oxygen masks falling. However, I tend to be a rule follower, especially around safety rules. But this particular rule, I have spent my whole life being pretty sure when it came down to it, I probably would not be able to follow this rule. I felt pretty sure, depending on who I was sitting next to, if they were someone I deeply loved or who appeared to be more vulnerable than me, physically, emotionally, whatever, in that moment, I would choose them, even knowing, like, logically it checks out that maybe I pass out and now that person who couldn't put on their own mask can't put mine on either, and I'm dead, and maybe I didn't even properly get their mask on. I get it, but I wasn't sure I could follow that rule. And part of that, or all of that, in my opinion, for me, has been rooted in identity, and that is where, out of that, I had no ability to have any real boundaries and value for my life. I want to start by defining boundaries for you, because I don't know that everybody means the same thing when they say, he violated a boundary, or that was a boundary of mine. And so I want to be clear about what I'm talking about when I say boundaries. Boundaries are limits that you define for yourself. Limits you define for yourself, and you communicate them clearly to others, and then you enforce them when necessary. So a boundary is not just, I really didn't like when someone did that, and so every time someone does that, I don't like it, and I get angry at them. Or I create distance, or I end the relationship. That's not a boundary. That's just your expectation, your preference. Without communication, you haven't set any form of boundary. A boundary is something you personally do. You set it, you define it for other people, communicate it, and if needed, you enforce it. So if someone else won't respect your boundary, you have to put things in place to make sure you won't allow yourself to be treated that way. If you are yelling at me, I can choose to leave the room. I can say, like, I'm willing to have a conversation with you, but I'm not willing to be spoken to like this. And I can make that choice and leave. But I'm going to tell you a little bit why I felt like I could not make those kinds of choices, even in the scenarios that I felt so sure I had an obvious reason to feel the way I was feeling and to want to set a boundary, to want to do something different. And in particular, from a young age, I experienced other people telling me about myself. My parents would tell me about myself, right? We all experience that. You're fine, you're okay, suck it up, you're overreacting, it's not that big of a deal. They might not have meant that in that moment. They might have actually meant, I'm late and I need you to stop crying for a minute so we can move along. But I let my parents tell me whether I was okay or not, even when my body was telling me I wasn't okay. If they said I was okay, I would listen to them. And then I went to school and I experienced peers telling me whether or not I was cool or weird or smart. And I experienced that from teachers and other religious authorities as well, about who I am and what I experience in my body. And I just believed them and lost touch with any access to what I knew to be true about myself. And that resulted in abandoning myself a lot. In every time I believed what somebody else had to say, and behaved in a manner that made other people happy and giving me praise, I abandoned myself and I found my identity wrapped up, not necessarily in any single relationship, but in collectively being someone who wasn't weird, who was likable, who was cool with everyone. I was okay with not being best friends with everyone, but I wasn't okay with a single soul not liking me. That felt incredibly uncomfortable. And even though it felt incredibly uncomfortable to betray myself, I was willing to do that. I was willing to change who I was, to dress differently, to appear differently, to behave differently, so that I would get the approval of other people, or at least not feel that rejection, that pain of being disliked. And I think it was probably middle school, high school, when I started to have a significant amount of consciousness of this. Like, I could see the ways in which I was very much not being myself. Maybe earlier than that, there were subtle ways, but I could see ways that I was totally being the opposite of who I was to appease someone else. And it didn't feel good. And I sought out ways to make changes. I started to understand a little bit about, like, maybe some concept of boundaries and what I would want. And in private and even in philosophical conversations with people, I could claim those things in high school, and I learned even more about them in college, but I still couldn't do them when push came to shove. When I was face to face with uncomfortable situations, if the other person was not just like overly helping me to create space for me to be myself and ask for what I needed in that relationship, I couldn't do it. If there was any pressure from other people to be something different than I was willing to look and be different for other people, and it kept hurting. And I grew up in the church. I grew up with people around me who didn't think that way about me and didn't treat me that way. And I had lots of people telling me that wasn't true. But just hearing it wasn't true, even when I felt like I was hearing it from the voice of God, wasn't enough. Because I didn't believe it. It felt like all of my access to worthiness and love came from outside of me. It came from being, having the church approve of the way I was living my life and the things I was doing, having the church stamp of approval that I am a good Christian, whatever that might mean. And it came from other people saying I was kind and helpful, other people liking to spend time with me. That is very unstable. It's a very unstable identity. I had good talk. I knew the right things. I knew what I wanted my identity to be in. And I could probably, really persuade other people to also look to that to be the foundation of their identity. And I really had no idea why I still couldn't do it. And I don't think that just having the willpower, just deciding you're going to believe something different is enough either. I think there is a spiritual journey of healing that is needed. For me personally, I started diving into that journey in a more significant way a couple of years ago. And when I started this job, I knew that part of my job was going to be in crisis, but also I started this job in a season where a lot of things was in turmoil for me, and I'm sure a lot of you faced a number of thoughts of who am I and what is the world in a post-pandemic world. For me in particular, I lived in California in 2020, and I was 11 weeks pregnant when the shutdowns happened with my first child. And it was a scary, lonely, weird, sometimes oddly beautiful season that year, 2020, being pregnant, being isolated. And in the middle of 2020, late June, I lost my job as a pastor. They told me they were going to cut my position effective at the end of the year and blamed it on COVID. That didn't feel authentic to me, but it didn't matter either. And my identity was so wrapped up in what everyone thought of me. And I felt pretty sure what happened was this church and I just weren't a good match. And now it became painfully obvious what they thought of me. And I didn't know who that made me. If even God's people didn't like me, who am I? And so then my husband and I made plans to move back to Kansas with no real idea what that would look like, other than we had family here and we felt better about our prospects of finding jobs in Kansas than California at that season. And yeah, it felt like some level of safety, but I also had some fear. There was a lot I didn't want to come back to in Kansas. I grew up around here, and I felt like there were ways I had been able to become myself in California. And then I moved back and realized I just had left problems here. I hadn't healed from them. I hadn't resolved them. I came back to them. And on September 30th, while still in California, of 2020, 4 years ago today, I went into the hospital because my son wasn't moving. And I was very afraid, and I spent the next 9 days in the hospital. My son was born on October 3rd, which will be this Thursday. He'll be 4. And he was great. I was not, and I came very close to death there. And so everything just looked different, and I didn't know what I needed, but I knew I needed something. So I dove into therapy. That was the way I decided to start this journey. I had seen a therapist a couple of other times in my life, but hadn't had excellent experiences, and ultimately I didn't feel safe that I had long-term access and support, and so it didn't work out great. And as I dove into therapy this time, I found, as I started to trust that I had access and I trusted the space, that it was confidential, I trusted my therapist that she wasn't going to judge me or respond to my most shameful thoughts or memories or beliefs in a way that would make more pain. And every time I trusted that space, it became more of this sacred space where I felt like I was meeting God and finding truth that other people had said to me, that I had said to many other people in my own sermons, but I just didn't believe in my own heart. And we can't force belief. You have to sit with it, and I believe, let the heart of God speak to your heart about what is true of who you are. And I want to encourage you that if any of you feel like you can resonate with those feelings of worthlessness outside of what other people think of you, or maybe some other identity marker, something you're good at, something you're known for, that while those things are incredibly beneficial and beautiful things in life, they can be what holds you back and what is crushing your soul when it is the source of your identity, because it can feel fragile. What if this thing happens that ruins that, right? For me, it was like I could actually had no capacity to be fully myself in relationship when I always am needing relationship to be stable to have any identity. So of course people don't like the way I am in relationship because I was always scared. And I was always behaving in ways that were fearful because I didn't believe I deserved any of the relationships I had. And while there were lots of little things that pushed me towards getting to know myself better and understand these things better, diving into that in a way with a trusted person has been a really important thing to me. Here on campus, we do have a campus counselor, Jose Gloria, who is available to you all and has free services available to you. He also can help you get access as well as I can to services outside of here. We do have a practice in Hesston that has other therapists, as well as close by there are a number of other places. And so we can help you find somebody that's a good fit. Nick Ladd, our campus ministries pastor, he's over here too, also is willing to have one-on-one sessions, and there's ways to sign up with him as well. But there might be other religious leaders, clergy in your life, mentors, close friends that can be a space where you can start to engage what kind of healing you need and getting to know yourself and that. And I just want to encourage you that from my perspective, healthy support looks like people that encourage you to seek your own understanding instead of telling you what you should do or think, that they are helping you find your way towards that and not telling you this is the prescription, but giving you guidance along that journey. That there are people who get curious when your words or actions don't seem to line up with your character as they know it, instead of offering judgment. That they ask questions of curiosity about you instead of, why the heck would you do that, type of questions. And that they care for who you are instead of what you could do for them. That you can sense that your value to them is about who you are and not what you bring to the table. Those are the type of people that are good, healthy places to start processing some of this. I believe that everyone deserves autonomy. Everybody deserves to be in a space where they can speak boldly. Excuse me? No, you can't talk to me like that. Or you may not touch me. That was not appropriate. That was not okay. But that can be incredibly difficult to do when you don't have a sense of identity and worth and value. And I found myself a year ago in a place where while I was trying really hard, there was a lot that was really important and that felt really a lot more important than my own stuff. In my professional life, in my family life. And I got to a point where my metaphorical inability to put my own mask on became life-threatening. I had gotten deep into an eating disorder that I didn't ever really fully recognize, but had been present in my life off and on for a long time. And it got to the point where I was on the verge of death if I didn't seek treatment and change. And so I have experienced a radical transformation and healing, almost because it felt like I needed to. It was time to put my own oxygen mask on. And so I want to end by sharing with you a poem that I wrote that is my commitment to myself, and the you in it is my son, and a commitment to him as well to take better care of myself. And then when I am finished with that, Michelle will come up and give instructions about attendance. But I also want to invite you to write on your sticky note, whether it's a word or a phrase, what's a boundary, what's an area of life you wish you could more clearly communicate, be more authentic and be you. And it could be a word, phrase, whatever you want to share. And then as you're leaving, put that sticky note on the doors of the church, these big wooden doors. So I titled this one, I'm going to start taking better care of myself. I'm going to start taking better care of myself, and I'm going to start taking better care of you. From the moment you were conceived in my womb, I conceived you in my soul, and I loved you with my whole being. I knew I would take on hell to protect you, and your entry into this world was almost my exit. I had never been closer to eternity than when you came out of it, and I was at its door. It was the most sacred trauma. The bond we created on the edge of eternity birthed a love inside me like I'd never known. And somehow, in the hours, in the days, in the weeks, in the months, in the years that followed, I lost myself. And I cared for you. In all of those moments, I spoke my love over you countless times each day. I never lost you. I lost myself. So I took off into the wilderness, hoping and praying my source would lead me home. I'm going to start paying better attention to myself, and I'm going to start paying better attention to you. In this wilderness, I have found that home had already settled deep within my soul. I wasn't lost out there in the wilderness. I was lost deep within myself. each part of me trying so valiantly to protect me from this pain, but their protection was really poison, slowly killing the most precious part of me, my true self. So I'm going to start loving myself better. Not so that I can love you better, though loving myself better will undoubtedly give me the strength and wisdom to love you better. No, I'm going to love myself better for the same reason I'm going to take better care of myself and the same reason I'm going to start paying better attention to myself, because I am worthy. I am worthy of care. I am worthy of attention. I am worthy of love. I am worthy not because of how I love and pay attention to and take care of you, not for what I do for anyone else, not because I make a difference in this world. I am worthy because my source is love, and love says we are all worthy. We are all worthy of care. We are all worthy of attention. We are all worthy of love. So I will take care of myself better, and I will pay better attention to myself, and I will love myself better, I promise. And out of the depth of the well my source dug within me, I will overflow with love and care and attention for you and for the world around me. And I pray you will know the source of the well deep within you and the truth that it springs forth, that you are worthy. And I'll pray that for the whole world. And that's still not the reason I'm going to take better care of myself and pay better attention to myself and love myself better. It's just the overflow of knowing my source, of knowing my worth.
It was beautiful and brave. And I can resonate with some of that story and my own journey of learning to love myself. Let's take a moment or two in silence